Hello, everybody, and welcome to Humans of Reliability. Ashley from Rootly here, as usual. And today I am joined by Tony from Affirm. It is always extra exciting when we get to chat with a Rootly customer on Humans of Reliability. So I'll toss it over to Tony to introduce himself and what he does.
My name is Tony Holmes. I am a nearly 30-year veteran in the development platform operations SRE space. When I look back on my career, I've actually been doing SRE since before it was actually coined SRE. In my early days, I was a hardware software designer, engineer, building computers, and operating systems, net file systems, and that sort of stuff. And we worked in the professional video space where reliability is paramount. Our discussion before we started record, there was a statement you made about the path from system into SRE. And there's something that I actually want. The way that I look at SRE, it's a discipline and a mindset more so than it is a set of skills. There are a broad set of skills. And the reason why I say that is SRE bears a lot of its roots from like the Federal Aviation Administration. Yeah.
Yes.
So that's actually where SRE gets a lot of its founding principles out of. And it was Ben Traynor over at Google that coined it as applying software engineering to operational principles, which he then also later expanded to being also including systems engineers and then all these other disciplines. The thing that I noticed is what he's actually was struck upon is what I've always felt. Site reliability is a reliability perspective that is approximately 10% of all skills or of people across all disciplines. Your administrators, your platform engineers, your developers, and the key goal for them is they protect the customers' production experience. And what we meant, and you have to use customers in the most generic sense, and you have to use production in a similar generic sense, because if you're talking internal customers, external customers, who do you deliver value to, and these sorts of things. So you could have a sysadmin that could be an absolutely stellar SRE and be amongst the best of them, and you could have the most well-trained developers that have no clue how to do anything reliable, because that's not their forte. They're more of a feature developer person, but you put them with an SRE and it'll just make everything better. So like I just want to establish that as the baseline, because that's how I look at it, which is why S3 is a techno-socio and engineering discipline. You have to take the people side of the equation equally with the technological side of the equation, because you're dealing with people using systems or trying to interact or bring systems back up into a good state, which means you need to consider the human condition in that moment.
So that's interesting. Yeah, we were talking about that a little bit. And, sysadmin and SRE are kind of feel like in some ways, maybe not two sides of the same coin, but two very adjacent crafts. And I guess to like back it up or sum it all up, like how would you describe the difference? Is SRE an evolution of sysadmin? Is it sysadmin plus the social issues? Like how do you kind of differentiate between what the day-to-day looks like in those two different roles?
S3 is a Venn diagram. So you have your administrators, network systems, platform or storage administrators. You will have your developers. You have your DevOps engineers. You have your CI/CD deployment engineers. You will have your developers. You will have your hardware engineers. Approximately 10% of them will approach it from the reliability first perspective. How will this thing fail, and how should I be dealing with it in the face of failure? So resiliency. One, can we make it reliable? But two, when things do fail, how can we best respond? So it's approximately 10% is what I found that have that as the first reflex of any discipline. And that's why I say it's multidisciplinary. So if you have the natural bent to dig in and figure out what's going on to improve things at the systems level and put processes and frameworks into place that make things more reliable, you're probably a reliability engineer in SRE. And I have seen so many companies get it wrong. They will like, you have admins, okay, you're no SREs. No. The skill set that you need is that curiosity, the ability to debug, and always keep the experience as the first class citizen of what you're trying to address, which means you're prioritizing a set of work which delivers value to that mission, not just fixing a thing. Like at the end of the day, we were designing very, very large scale systems, and we should not ever be in a place where one node failing should take your service out. And in fact, you should be able to tolerate a larger amount of failures up until a point until you start impacting deliverable SLOs or the user experience, what the minimum bar you want to deliver to customers are. And then the extension of that is what is the user's experience across services. So focusing on a single system is not worthwhile. Focusing on a single service may or may not be useful. Focusing on how the user interacts with each services during a workflow is what you need to focus on. I use the login experience as the most common example. You need like your actual authentication database, your profile data, like your user account details, your profile, your access controls, and that's usually in the identity space. But depending on what you're logging into, that will also be in scope for the service for that particular interaction. And then you have usually that little you logged in from this IP on this date. Is that actually really important? Maybe. If a person's coming here to specifically look for that, that's important. But if they're not, and that particular system's slow at that moment in time, and you're just logging on the main page, should you show it? Like this is the crux of what SRE is all about: is what is important right now, and how can we drive the right reliability outcomes based on that, especially when you're hitting capacity constraints, performance constraints, or you're actually suffering an incident or defect that is restricting your ability to perform the function in the first place.
Awesome. Actually, to back up for a second, just to make sure the audience knows. So your actual role at Affirm is the head of SRE. And I'd like to know for you what that looks like in a day-to-day sense, as opposed to working as an IC SRE, what type of decisions are you making, and what actually consumes a lot of your time leading an SRE org? Can you kind of talk about that?
Sure. So right now I'm fulfilling a dual role. So I'm leading up the SRE and redefining the function left from previous leadership. I'm redefining it, and it's little nudges and tweaks and optimizations here and there. But one of the things that was never done is actually what is the implementation model, because there are many. So I'm defining the program, the methodologies. On the day-to-day, I actually work with my team to identify current pain points and get them executing on their mission. One of the things we're having to overhaul right now is our incident management flow, because we've identified that we got the company on a good path to reducing self-inflicted pain, code bugs and configuration. And there's a saying in SRE, 2/3 or 3/4 of incidences are caused by human change. And that's we actually had that. 73% was our number. In the recent weeks, we got it down to external vendors are our number one cause. So external to Affirm, which is an excellent place. But now what we're seeing is we're always taking and very common, and this is where Netflix has really pushed the envelope, is there's no single root cause. So we'll have an external dependency, and it will fail. And that happens. Our systems should be resilient to that. But then we find out they're not in the way that they want them to be. So now we have to start looking at dual root causes, external or internal, because like the root dependency could be an internal one, and the systems that depend on it. And it's start like, okay, well, there's a defect in that thing, the triggering thing. So a system A or this vendor has had an outage, but we didn't respond to it correctly. Our services failed to actually be resilient in the face of that. So now we're starting to have to go back and wait a second, we need to take a look at our history of postmortem documents and figure out what has happened over time and start teasing out better insights. So there's the internal or Affirm side of things, and then there's the well, if it's internally as well, it's also Affirm, but there's also this triggering root cause, and then what are the two sides of the equation? What does that system need to, or vendor need to do to be more reliable? What do we need to do to make sure that we lessen or control the impact on the experience? So that's what we're doing today. So I will go from defining how we're doing more detailed availability measurements, or revising our severity guidelines, which really good that I walked into a company that had them, but they're not aligned to our SLOs. So like that's a red flag for me. It's like, okay, I want to drive something that is meaningful. Right now, a lot of alerts tend to be Seb 1, and maybe we escalate to the Seb 0, but then we kind of figure out, oh, there are Seb 2 or Seb 3. We want to make that the first thing that happens. So my goal to sum all that stuff up is I'm trying to create a framework and execute on the human side of the equation, making things clearer, more consistent, easier to reason about. I had a former colleague of mine that stated well to define the minimum number of statements to which people can make valid, reasoned assumptions about the state of a thing. So if they get an alert and it says it's Seb 0, it is. There's no ambiguity in that. Right now, we're working in ambiguity, and every company goes through this transition. This is not any statement on Affirm's path. It's a very traditional one where like we're doing threshold alerting as opposed to error budget burns, which is pioneered by Google. But it's aligning these best practices, and there's a lot of really good roots and foundations established. So mine is like, okay, we need to tweak here. Now we're better aligned, which reduces the pain, which makes this clear. Oh, but if we tweak this a little bit here, now this whole thing becomes very easy for people to understand. I've been here 3.5 months, and one of the first things I did was like the way that we applied the impact of an incident was very fuzzy. I clarified that, and now I have other people speaking on using the same terminology because they've seen it enough times to go, wait, no, like, this is how we're responding. Then let's go and measure. Okay, that was the impact. We have our thresholds, and I'm creating little reliability advocates everywhere, which is like what I love. Like I'm trying to make more of people like me that think about them in the same manner. I've had lots of the conversations. So that big blobby mess of thing, I have a very chaotic day to day.
Yeah.
But it is all driven towards the same thing, which is making reliability easier to understand for every person on the team, in any team, product, engineering, and the platform space, so that they can be consistent in how they apply our guidelines as we're revising our guidelines. So it's a bit convoluted. It's a bit messy. It's a lot of fun. So.
Yeah. Well, and that's very consistent with, I would say a lot of our customers and companies in that like later but still very much growth stage, like Affirm is, where it's not that you have nothing, it's that you're learning so much as the company is being run and everything is changing all the time. And you're sort of doing that, building the plane while flying it everywhere, including your reliability system. I mean, I think of Shopify when I was there from 2017 to 2023, very similar experience, right? Where it's like we have it, but we're rethinking it constantly.
Yes.
But there's something that you said that I really want to go back to that was specific to severity levels. And you talked about how you're rethinking those to be in line with SLOs. Can you talk a little bit more about like what makes severity levels good and effective versus maybe some of the mistakes that you might see when people are defining those severity levels early on?
Google does it really well. So if anyone can grab the Google handbook, go read their chapters on defining SLOs and alerting. Multi-window alerting is the way to go. So to paraphrase what they do is you want to know when you're receiving an alert how urgent it is. And the best way, and I think this is consistently the best way. No, there's some paradigms where this will not apply, but I'm talking about typical online services. You want to base your alerting on burn, error budget burn. If you're delivering 3 nines reliability, that means you have an error budget of 0.1% over whatever period. So for us, we have monthly SLOs, 3 nines will be one of them. Some services are tighter, some are looser, but I'll use that as the example. We want to alert urgently if we're burning the error budget very quickly. So if there's a system like DNS has gone out, which will impact a lot of things, which means yeah, it's always DNS. Exactly. There's a haiku about it. That will raise the flags because you're burning a lot of SLO broadly everywhere very intently. Like everything's down and it's 100% down and things are just blowing up. So you want your alerting to indicate that. So we'll actually, based on our error rates and our normal volume of transactions, we'll see that we're approaching 100% error rate or whatever it is. And you shape it with a long window and a short window so you can catch really big peaks, like very urgent, or over this period of time. So for sub-zero, it'll be a very short period of time. You're going to burn a very significant chunk of your SLO. So by doing this, the area under the graph, if you're familiar with any math, when you're doing integrals, you're looking at the area under the graph. They are the same thing. One's very sharp and tall, very narrow. One is low but very wide. But it's set around the concept of, say, so sub-zero, you are going to burn 10% of your error budget in, let's say, 6 hours. That's a lot. If you're losing over 30 days, you are losing 10% in 6 hours. That's huge. That means at the end, you would have burned 240% of your error budget, or 2,400%. Not good at math this early in the morning. So you want your alerts aligned around that. And then you set the various levels. So the sub-zeros will be your very, very sharp ones. Your next one will be the sub ones, which is probably going to be 1% in the same period, or 10% over a longer period of time. Google has a pattern of 6-to-1, very, very common, where the height versus the width, it tends to be a 6-to-1 ratio for all the definitions. A sub-1 is 6 times more impactful than a sub-zero in terms of the window that they look over. So you're going to burn 10% over 3 days. Okay, so that means at sub-1, at the end, you're just going to burn your SLO, for example. And you don't need to use these exact numbers, but this is the kind of thinking that they get you into.
Yeah. So what I like about that is it gives some objectivity, because I think people struggle with severity, where often I'll see, our severity level is as simple as like, sub-3 is minor, sub-2 is moderate, sub-1 is severe, sub-0 is critical. And it's like, but that doesn't mean anything to somebody with no context on the overall system and how deeply something impacts it. Like, if you're brand new on call, everything feels like a sub-zero. It's scary when something's broken.
And what is the severity of a 1 request per minute service versus a billion requests per second? They should scale.
Yeah.
But when I actually define the guidelines, so you can't, for every single service, you'll have service-specific things that they're measuring that are important to them. So at Affirm, we're creating loans for people. For the services that generate loans, the number of them that start and get completed are crucial to their metrics. So the alerting should be around, like, we have golden signals. We also have downstream health, so mandatory and optional dependencies, but then also what is important to the service specifically. And we always want to make sure that that is clearly in focus. But I do use in the severity guidelines like that. Sub-zero, the kind of impact that will exhaust our SLAs really quickly. It's the kind of impact that's immediately noticed by a large audience, and will have significant impact to our reputation, to our cash flow, to our customers. Sub-1, it'll get noticed. It's painful for people. It will have an impact, and we try to put some dollar figures or percentages and stuff like that, just to give people the idea of the shape. A sub-2, it might get noticed. It won't have a meaningful impact, but there may be some people that hurt. And sub-3, people probably won't even notice. Like, so this is the kind of, like, using those terminologies, you want to describe what it means.
Which also people to very quickly identify a potential severity, because we all know that trap of, like, you don't want people to have to pull queries and things just to figure out your severity level. It should be immediately obvious which bucket something falls into, or, like, maybe you're between two, just go with the worst one and downgrade if you need to.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think that'll be really helpful also to have, like, thank you for the tangible examples of what that looks like, because people really appreciate that. This is a bit of a gear shift, but it's something I want to make sure we talk about. Obviously, you have a lot of knowledge in SRE and technical knowledge in building these programs, but something I noticed from your LinkedIn is that you are a great manager, and that's obvious to me for a few reasons. One, because I can see profiles full of recommendations from people who have reported directly to you. And I can see that you've also given recommendations, which shows that you care about people even after they leave the team. And also, I noticed in a lot of your work experience, when you're listing those accomplishments of what's going on your resume, one of the things that you talk about is specific examples of people who have grown, maybe from an IC to a manager, senior to staff while they've been reporting to you. So I just want to touch on that and ask you, what does good mentorship look like to you? Like, how do you think of your role as a mentor when you're leading these orgs?
So I just did my mentorship training yesterday.
Oh,
And the thing that I find funny, mentorship has a variety of types of mentorship. I have a mentee from Toronto that I've known for 14 years. He's a close friend and a mentor around life, goals, aspirations, direction, and we meet once a month and we have these really intense conversations. And we meander, and we are keeping our thoughts and our focus and our curiosity alive. Within the company environment, I believe that everyone in our team should be mentoring somebody if in some capacity, with the exception of the juniors whose entire reason to be is to learn. Inside the team, you have the technical or role-based mentors. I will typically mentor the most senior engineers in my team. They will then measure the next layer down, and so on and so forth. And there'll be some like skips and stuff going on in there to give perspective. There's technical mentorship, which are easy. This is a skill. Here's how I recommend you approach it. Here's how you go and learn it. Soft skills. That's the hard one. There are a larger people that have a very difficult time going from a technical to a soft influence-based skill set. And I like to use those as superpowers. I want you to go talk to this person because they are really good at influence without authority. I want you to go and spend 6 months with them, whatever cadence works, 30 or 60, 30, 60 minutes a week or 30 minutes every, well, whatever the cadence works. And I want you to go to them and you want that superpower and you make it very clear this is what you're looking for and you want guidance on how you can grow that skill. So that's often in team, but I also recommend people have in team mentorship and out of org mentorship. They may want to have someone else in the org, like infrastructure in our group. Go get one of the other high level ICs so you can understand how they perceive your team and you. And then you want to go to like a product team. How do they view the role of like our platform, our team? So it gives perspective. It gives you direction. The mentorships should be with a purpose. And some of them, once you get the skill, they should end. And then you will find another one to like for a technical skill or whatever. The life ones are the ones that will tend to continue. Or if you have a mentor that's moving up the chain and pulling you up, that's also another one that can continue as you identify, okay, what's the difference between senior staff and director? Or director to senior director, VP, what are you focusing on? So critical. I expect that is something I measure performance against in my teams. And the role that you fill, especially at the higher levels, sometimes you're a coach, sometimes you're a father, sometimes you step back and all you're doing is introducing people, like introducing opportunities. So it's going to be tuned to the needs of the mentee. And the mentor should also be learning in the process of how to become a better mentor at the same time.
Yeah, that's great. I think that says a lot about, the type of culture you build and what it's like at a firm or, anywhere that you're leading a team. Because I hear so often people when they talk about what they want out of a role or a company, it's like opportunities for growth. I want, to know that I can move up. But in like everyone's going to say that they have that, but there's a big difference between sure, maybe you could get promoted when a posting goes up, or we're carving the path and we're helping you get on it and we're helping you identify where your gaps are and fill them. I think that's like what a true like mentorship is.
Yeah.
So I know we're cutting it on time here. I have one more like rapid fire question that's just a totally fun one. We talked a bit before about how you're in the e-commerce space. I come from the e-com space before, really. So I'm curious if you're a big online shopper and what the most exciting thing that you have bought online this year is.
My wife is the big online shopper. But I've done my fair share, and I'm actually staring at mine right now. It is a wonderful large form curve monitor. Affirm has this what they call the wallet program for, since we don't have brick and mortar offices, we do, but we're primarily work from home. They give us wallets and budgets to buy equipment for home. So I upgraded my work monitor, which is fantastic, and it doubles also. I get to use it for my gaming. So yeah, that's the best thing I've done. I got it 2 months ago, and I'm absolutely loving it.
I love the curve monitors. I'd like to get one of those. We also have a office budget.
Yeah.
And it's so handy. I've got so many little things. I've got like the reason my lighting is so good right now is because I bought a ring light for all
There
of
you
you
go.
I record.
Yeah.
Well, that is amazing. Thank you so much, Tony. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. I wish we could keep going forever, but you know how it is. It's Friday. We
Mhm.
gotta get back to our day.
Mhm.
But before we stop the recording, I just want to invite you if there's anything you would like to share with our audience. You know, we always offer a free plug if you're hiring, if you're speaking somewhere, anything at all.
Yes. So at Affirm, I am building out the central SRE model. So far in the industry, there's been one company that's done that well. That's Netflix. I was there and learned a lot from the actual people that implemented it. I worked closely with them. So I'm actually looking for an L8IC that would understand how. So sorry, L8 if that's in the terms, senior staff IC that understands the nuances between the different estuary models, and particularly in this case, the influence, the technical skills, and the social skills required to build a small, like 10 to 15 person estuary team to support 2,500 engineers. So that's what I'm looking to hire.
Fantastic. Like I said, thank you so much, Tony. It's been a pleasure. We're so happy to have you on. And thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.